This is my brutally honest review of The Sims 4 Nifty Knitting. This is a part of a series where I review every pack for The Sims 4, including all of the older ones. EA describes Nifty Knitting as a pack where you can pick up your new favorite hobby, knit clothing for the whole family, or decorate with knitted stuff. Prepare to rock with 4 new rocking chairs and a rock music station, and shop online with Plopsy. Taking a look at Create a Sim mode, the pack comes with a few hair meshes. To be honest, they're not really that great. If you're into the whole 1930s nuclear family vibe, then maybe you'll like it. But to be honest, I think they're pretty bad, especially the men's ones look awful. Before we look at the clothing, I just want to express not all of the clothing is actually available from CAS to begin with. Obviously, the whole point of this pack is knitting, so a lot of the clothing that you see in my review is actually clothing that you first have to unlock by knitting it. But I wanted to show you all of it anyway from the start. Now, a big criticism that I do have about the CAS here is that we lack a lot of elder clothing in this game severely. This was the pack for elder clothing and we basically didn't get any. The stuff in this pack feels a little bit random, to be honest, and not really that inspired. There's also a huge lack of men's CAS, which is just embarrassing, to be honest, considering how many options there could have been for men's jumpers. There's also a massive lack of stuff for kids and absolutely nothing for male kids other than a girl's top, which was clearly just remeshed onto boys because it's very feminine looking. Although there is at least a onesie and a cute hat for infants. The CAS here feels like a bit of an afterthought, and considering this whole pack is about knitting clothing, I'm very surprised. Apart from the cursed knitted sweater, which I absolutely love, everything else is very average. Seeming the whole point of the pack is to knit clothing, they should have at least given us some nice knitted clothing to wear to actually incentivize doing the knitting in the first place, but they didn't, and it just doesn't really make much sense. This is such a weirdly missed opportunity, and I don't know how EA managed to miss it, seeming the whole point of the pack is about knitting clothing. I just don't get it. It's getting a 2 out of 10 for the CAS. Now, there's barely anything to start off with in build mode, and that's because a lot of it is locked behind the knitting skill. But to show you the things that are not locked away first, I think it's a little bit silly that we got 4 versions of the exact same rocking chair, which just feels like unnecessary pack bloating. We got a sofa and we got some decorations to make a knitting room, which are mostly in bright swatches, although there are a couple of plain swatches too. I think the desk is actually really cool, but we definitely should have got a desk chair to go with it, which doesn't make much sense. I think this stuff is generally nice, and I think that you can make a nice knitted space with it all. In terms of the locked away stuff behind the knitting skill, it's mostly hanging plants and teddies. I think most of the objects are nice and pretty enough to warrant knitting them, although there definitely should have been a big functional teddy bear and some objects with like gameplay elements. It's only really rewarding up to a certain point to knit some cute stuff before you realize none of them really have any gameplay. And there are many different like swatches of basically the exact same thing, so it seems like there's more than there actually is. I definitely think they should have gone further with knitting brand new objects, for example the big teddy bear as I mentioned, and if they were feeling really ambitious, I honestly think they should have made it so you can knit an entire occult, kind of like the imaginary friend teddy bear, which actually becomes a real sim in The Sims 3 Generations. Integrating the imaginary friend in this way would have been perfect for the Nifty Knitting pack, seeing that it doesn't really come with that much, but obviously it's a big missed opportunity. I also just feel like there should have been a lot more knittable objects, seeing that there aren't many unlocked objects to begin with. What about like a cursed knitted sofa? And we only actually got 1 knitted rug, and I feel like we should have got a lot more because that rug is a little bit basic. The build stuff that we do have is a little bit average. Some of it is nice. I just feel like they should have gone so much further with it, seeming that's the whole point of the pack. There just definitely isn't enough to warrant it even being average, so I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. Taking a look at gameplay, the game obviously comes with the knitting skill, which goes up to level 10, and as you go through all the different levels, you can begin knitting more and more things. Each swatch of something that you knit is considered a separate thing, so if you want every swatch of the same item, you have to do all of them, which is something that I do like, so I think it makes it a little bit more challenging. As well as knitting the things already shown in CAS and build mode review sections, you can also make animal clothing if you have the cottage living pack, which is really really cool. You can also use wool collected with cottage living to knit for free, which is a nice cross-pack play. In fact, this pack works really well in general, I think, with cottage living. You can also use a yarn ball if you have cats and dogs and the cats will play with it. Once you've knitted some stuff, you can keep it for yourself, donate it to charity, or list it on Plopsy. Plopsy is the Sims version of Etsy. Listed items will eventually sell for simoleons, and they typically sell for more money than just selling it from your inventory, although obviously it takes a lot longer to sell and you have to post it. I think it's a really nice idea. I do wish it was a little bit more challenging in order to bloat the feature out more, because I feel like they could have done a lot more with it. Although one thing that I do love is you can actually buy stuff from Plopsy from your phone. The stuff that you can get from the Plopsy store is mostly craftable, unique items that you can't ordinarily buy yourself and would normally have to create yourself. I actually really like this because you can get random stuff without having to raise skills or collect items in order to make them, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think it's a really great feature, and it has a lot of cross-pack play with craftables from other packs. Although when you buy something from Plopsy, it immediately appears in your Sims inventory. It's not posted into your mailbox in why doesn't it just get posted in your mailbox and then it arrives the next day? That would have been the more realistic way of doing it instead of it poofing in your inventory. It just seems like a weird oversight. Once you complete the knitting aspiration, you get the sacred knitting knowledge trait, which allows you to craft a special teddy called Yarny, which I believe is a character from another EA game. You also get to mentor other people when you achieve this trait, which allows them to gain the knitting skill faster. You can also craft the cursed sweater that my sim was wearing that actually gives your Sims a negative moodlet, which I think is quite funny. In terms of miscellaneous features, there's a heavy metal music station, and your Sims can do an air guitar thing whilst listening to it. Also, something that I actually quite like about this pack is if you knit something like a sweater and you give that sweater to another Sim, you get a long-lasting tense moodlet with that Sim, and if you attempt any romantic interactions, they fail and your relationship goes down. Apparently, this is to do with something in the real world called the knitted sweater curse, where if you give somebody a knitted sweater, it's like creating a fate that you will eventually break up. It's like some kind of knitting superstition known in the knitting world, and I think it's cool that they put it in The Sims. The pack's gameplay is a little bit shallow and definitely needs some work. It had the opportunity, especially to add some more things for elders, and to be honest, I think they should have just made this an elder stuff pack and added knitting as a minor feature rather than making it the main theme. I also think it's a massively missed opportunity that they didn't add the imaginary friend teddy that's knittable and turn it into kind of like an occult like they did with Bonehilda and the paranormal stuff pack. That would have been really cool. I think the pack gives you a little bit of fun, like maybe 20-30 minutes gameplay, but it doesn't really come with that much. The novelty does wear off after a while and it does get a little bit mundane. And to be honest, like, you won't really appreciate wearing the cast outfits that you've knitted, so it doesn't feel that rewarding. Although I do give Nifty Knitting credit for not actually being that buggy. This is the first Sims 4 pack review, I think, I've ever done where it hasn't actually bugged out, which is like a world record for Sims packs. The gameplay of Nifty Knitting stuff is unfortunately incredibly average, not ambitious at all, something that I would expect from The Sims 4, lacking ambition, lacking innovation, and lacking a lot of creativity. So unfortunately, I'm giving this pack a 5 out of 10 for gameplay. My overall score for The Sims 4 Nifty Knitting stuff is a 3.6 out of 10. If you particularly want to knit in your game, by all means get the pack, but I'm 99% sure you won't like the cast and build stuff enough to warrant getting the pack, and I'm roughly 80% sure you won't care much for the gameplay either. If you can afford the pack and you want maybe some stuff for your elder Sims to do and give their lives a bit more meaning, then by all means do it. But for most people, I just don't really think it's worth it. I have an entire playlist of my brutally honest reviews. Make sure you check it out. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.